The next thing in the sales cycle that we're going to take a look at is the sales order process within X3. So for a sales order, there's two common starting points. One would be converting a sales quote into a sales order. Then the alternate path would just be to simply create the sales order anew. So let's take a look at the quote conversion process. To a sales order, there's a couple different ways by which you can approach it, kind of a push way and a pull way. So if I come under sales, quotes, then quotes once again, I'm going to pull up my full entry transaction. Okay, so here is our sales quote, and I could push the creation of a sales order from this quote simply by coming over here and clicking on this order button. I'm going to choose my full entry. Now we're at the sales order menu. So again, all your sales site, customer information, pricing information, product information, and so forth is all carried forth over to the sales order record. Okay. So that's one way by which to do the conversion. Alternatively, there's a pull approach. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and click on the delete button here to delete the sales order. And I'm going to say OK here. And that will basically put the quote back in the state that it can be reconverted. So we'll close there, close out of quote management. Now in terms of the pull approach, if I come to sales orders, then orders, I'm going to go into my full entry transaction. I'm going to start by clicking on the new button. I'll specify my sales site. Come over and I'll specify my order type. My reference number, that can be where I put my customer's purchase order number. Put my customer's account number here. And once I specify my customer's account number, I can come down in my left list and choose this quote selection tray. And this will give me a register of my valid quotes that I have yet to convert. Go ahead and click on that. And that in part will bring in my product details with all the quantity and pricing information that I had to find on the quote. Okay, then I can just come here and click on create, and that'll go ahead and assign it a sales order number. Okay. So that's the approach of creating a sales order, a couple different approaches of creating a sales order from a sales quote. Now, alternatively in this menu, I could just come and create a sales order from scratch. In much the same way, I'm just going to come over here, click on the new button. Once again, I'll specify my sales site. In my type field, I'll define my order type. This order type field, in many environments, you'll see folks set this up. You might have an order type for standard orders, an order type for web orders, an order type for direct orders, sample orders, are all common examples of order types, different order types that you can establish and use for your analytical reporting. This field here is going to be your system assigned sales order number. There's revision controls that you can turn on within X3, so you can keep track of how many different times you revise the sales order. The reference field here, this is where your customer's PO number can be defined. You have the date of the order. Here in my sold to field, this is where I'm going to put my customer's account number. I can go ahead and click on that magnifying glass to pull up a selection list. Then I can do a quick select to identify the customer. Default currency is set. If this was an intercompany or intersite sales order, that would be indicated as such through these flags. Down here on our Management tab, we have the account number that the billing, the sales invoice, is going to be registered against. We have a pay by account, which represents the account from which the AR cash receipt is going to be registered from when they ultimately pay the bill. We have a group customer over here. That it's a group customer that you can use for your different types of analytical reports within the system. One common example would be you could set up if you did business with multiple kind of subsidiary companies that were sister companies of sorts, you could establish their common parent entity as the group customer. We have the delivery address. So for this particular customer, it looks like we only have the one address from which to choose, but you could have multiple in X3. If you did anything by way of project tracking in the system, you could assign the project code associated with the order. On the sales order, we have sales reps, a primary sales rep and a secondary sales rep that's going to default in from your customer master. These can be overridden at the time of order entry. Here in the lower left-hand corner, we have a management and taxes section. Okay, so if the order was a loan order, which is one of our special sales order types, used in cases where you anticipate getting the products back from your customer, you can specify the expected return date of the loan goods. We have a closing reason code. Once the sales order is created, if the user wanted to force close the sales order, one common example would be just your customer calls up and no longer needs the product. Depending upon how your parameters are set up, the customer service person could come over here and click on the close button, and then in part they would get a selection list of your different close reasons from which to choose. The customer's taxing information, their tax code, is going to default in. The default currency associated with the account is going to flow through. Over here in the status section, if we used any signature controls within X3, maybe the sales order needed to be signed off by the sales department manager before the order could be processed, we could institute controls such as that within the system. We have an ordered status field here indicating if the order is opened or closed. We have this concept of allocations within X3 that we're going to talk about more in subsequent lessons, but the nature of the allocation is it's basically an inventory reservation against the sales order. It can be defined on what we call a global or a detailed basis. We have a delivery status over here. So this will indicate to us if the sales order has been delivered yet, or maybe if it's been partially delivered. In a likewise manner, we have an invoice status field indicating as to whether or not we've done the billings yet against the sales order or the sales order shipments. We have credit controls here on the sales order. In X3, on your customer file, you'll probably recall how we can establish credit lines on the customer's account. So in the event that when you input the sales order puts their customer over their credit line, the credit status here will read limit exceeded. Alternatively, you could also put the customer on hold and a firm credit hold, and that credit status field would indicate as much. So you could enter in the sales order, but you wouldn't be able to process the sales order until you went ahead or the credit manager went ahead and released the lock. We have the lock here. Then we also have a general hold field. These would be sales order holds over and above that of credit. So maybe your organization's rules are that you need to have a signed PO from the customer before you process the order. You could put a hold code on the order such as that, PO not received yet. We have an indicator down here as to whether or not the acknowledgement has been received or printed out yet. Over here on the Delivery tab, this is where we come to specify the warehouse from which the order is going to be fulfilled. We have a delivery priority, so if you want to give precedence to certain customers or certain customer orders, you can flag those orders accordingly. We have a requested delivery date over here, so this is the date that the customer would like the goods to arrive at their facility. You have a delivery lead time, which represents the lead time from the warehouse to the customer's address. So X3 in part will basically backfill what the anticipated shipping date should be in order to get the goods to the customer on time. Down here in our transport section, there's a variety of different route codes that we could set up. So if your organization has their own fleet of trucks and those trucks run, you have certain dedicated drivers or certain dedicated routes, you could go ahead and set that accordingly on the sales order and get your shipping documentation to be printed out by route. Here in your delivery mode, this is where we can come to indicate if the goods should go by ground, by rail, by sea, in a variety of different ways. You have a carrier specification over here, so you can detail the freight carrier that's going to move the goods. You have your Incoterms here that you can set up. Okay. So again, indicating the point of title transfer, indicating who's liable for the insurance and the freight charges on your shipment. Okay, down here in our rules section here, we have a settings down here to be able to close unfilled lines. So with this check mark in place, and this is a setting that actually both of these settings default in from the customer master. This check mark is an indicator as to whether or not, if you have a back order situation, if the customer service is allowed to manually close out the order, or if you enforce that the back order also needs to be fulfilled. Then we have this one order per delivery setting here. So some of the subsequent steps in the sales order fulfillment process are going to relate to generating shipping records against these orders. So if this box is not checked, basically that enables you to consolidate multiple sales orders into one single delivery record. Okay. Over here in our last document sections, this will indicate to us the last shipping record or last delivery record and its date that was generated against the order. Down here in our partial delivery section, this is where we can come to indicate, basically if back orders are allowed. Okay, so we have a full permission for back orders. This setting right here for the shipping the line complete indicates if you had a multi-line sales order, you could have back orders with this setting, but you would have to, in order to generate a delivery, you would have to have sufficient inventory to fill out the line of a sales order. You couldn't have break a back order off on a single sales order line. Then we also have this setting down here indicating to us that no back orders are permissible. Over here in our allocation type, we have the global versus the detailed allocation, and we're going to talk more about these in subsequent lessons. In short, the global allocation is basically reserving just a given number of units, stocking units against the sales order line, whereby the detailed allocation is when you perform the allocation step, X3 specifies what particular lot out of what particular location is going to be allocated to the sales order line. Here in our invoicing tab, we have informations here relating to the invoicing. A common setting for many X3 clients is that you'd want to do one invoice per each shipment record that is generated in the system. Alternatively, we could do one invoice per once the sales order has been closed out in full. We could do one per sales order. Okay. You can have, once we get to the lines tab here on our sales order, you'll see how you can have different fulfillment out of different warehouses or different ship tos. So you could go ahead and break your billing on the ship to. You could do one per period here. So in X3, there's certain controls that you can institute on the customer file that indicates that they only get one invoice per month or one invoice per week, one invoice per day. That is one of our period billing options. Then we also have this manual invoicing option down here that basically puts the order in its respective delivery in a state that a user would have to manually create the invoice, as opposed to letting it being picked up by the automated billing routines. Over here in our payments last document section, we have our payment terms that we assign to the order. So your net 30, net 45, net 60, cash in advance and so forth are going to be expressed here through the payment term. We have the settlement discount over here, which is an indicator as to whether or not we grant the customer the ability to take a discount if they pay within a shortened time frame. So in this case, this term here relates to a 2% discount if they pay within 10 days. If your sales order has been converted from a quote, the quote number will be listed here. If you've done any pro forma invoicing through this pro forma button over here on the sales order, your pro forma number will be listed there. Then here we have our last invoice number and its respective date. So when we start doing billings against the order, this will indicate the last time and the last invoice number that was registered. Down here in the analytical section, this is where we can specify some of our dimensional information associated with the order. And again, these analytical dimensions are useful from an analytical reporting side. In many cases, these analytical dimensions can also pass through to our books, so enabling us to compartmentalize our revenues and our cost of sales and so forth by this dimensional breakout. So in this case, it looks like we have a market segment dimension defaulting in from the customer file. So this is a wholesaler. Over here in our invoicing elements section, this is where we can have certain below the line discounts or additional charges. Okay, so in this case, if there's an additional freight charge or an additional insurance card charge, I could present those in this field. Okay, it's important to note these invoicing elements can be customized to the specific needs of your organization. Next here over in our Lines tab, this is where we come in to specify our product details. So I can click on the magnifier to pull up my product list. I can go ahead and choose a part. Okay, I get the respective description here. Specify my quantity on the sales order. Okay, so I'm getting a message here indicating that this product doesn't exist on this warehousing site. So it's a little bit of a control that X3 has in the system. So actually, let me go back to the delivery tab, and I'm going to update that shipping site right there. So now when I come back, I should have a product site record established at that warehouse. Okay. Quantity. The quantity to allocate. I got my allocation type defaulting in from the delivery tab. Here's my gross price. I don't have any discount or adding elements here. There's my net price. Here's my per unit cost, the respective profit margin. Here are my tax rules that flow forth from the product. My sales rep or reps and their respective commissions they're entitled to will all flow through here. Okay, got my delivery information with the respective lead time and the ship date. So these dates can be updated on a line-by-line basis. Okay. Got my status here. Can indicate this as being a firm or a planned order line. Okay, so this is a firm order that I actually want to fulfill. The source for delivery here. For many organizations, the typical setting for your source for delivery is going to be that you're fulfilling these order just out of your warehouse, out of stock. Alternatively, we have some of these, what we refer to as our back-to-back ordering scenarios. So for instance, if I was to set my source for delivery to PO customer direct, that would indicate that I'm not filling the sales order out from goods available at my warehouse, but rather I'm going to be turning around and issuing a purchase order to one of my suppliers, and that supplier in part will direct ship those goods to my client. I have this PO receive and ship, which is sometimes referred to as a cross-docking situation. So again, I'm going to place the order. I'm going to turn around and issue a purchase order to one of my suppliers. That supplier in part will ship the products to my warehousing facility, and upon receipt of that inventory at my warehouse, those goods will automatically be allocated to this sales order. Okay. Then finally here I have the work order setting here. So again, if I'm in a manufacturing environment, with this is kind of like a make to order, is a term that's often used. So basically we'll be generating a work order from the sales order, and we'll go through the production process, and once we create the goods from the work order, it will automatically be married to the sales order. Okay, so if we have one of those back-to-back order scenarios, whether it be a PO or a work order, that information here will be captured in this back-to-back order field. Okay, we have packaging information that can default in from our product file. Then we also have some additional analytical dimensions here on the lines that we can specify. So with that all set, I'm going to come over here and click on the Create button. Okay, so I'm getting a little error message here saying that I have, based upon some of my allocation rule settings here, it says I have insufficient available stock and a partial allocation is not authorized. Okay, so that kind of lends to what I'm seeing back here about a non-allocated state. And again, we're going to talk about these allocation rules in greater details here in some of our subsequent lessons. But at any rate, at this point, it's still allowed for the sales order to be created. So if I want to go ahead and print out my acknowledgement to send to my customer, I can come over, click on my printer icon, then go to Record. At this pop-up menu here, I'm going to choose the customer order acknowledgement. These are all different sales order forms that can be customized. Okay, all my report parameters will default in appropriately. I'm going to come over and click on Print. My pop-up, I'm going to open it with my Adobe Reader. Okay, so here's my acknowledgement form. All my sales order information, the date of the order, customer PO, delivery method. Got my delivering information, the products that the sales order is made out for. Okay, so there's kind of the out of the box order acknowledgement form. So next here, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the inquiries and reports that are associated with our sales orders. So I can go ahead and close out of here. Then under my sales menu here, I'm going to come down to inquiries, then over here to orders. So here are all my various inquiries that I have associated with the sales orders. So in here we have the list of orders and the order lines. Again, this is going to show you sales order header information, then product details. We got orders per period, sales orders based upon the route that they're scheduled on. And for this case, let's go ahead and take a look at this order hit list. So if I click on that, I can come in here, and if I want to filter my results for a particular company or a sales site, I can do that. I can specify a date range over which I want to inquire. Then I got my different flags down here. If I want to see, normal orders versus not, if I want to filter out if it's closed or not closed. I have indicators for that, if it's been signed off or not. So I have a variety of different filters there. So once I set my parameters here, I can come over and either click on my customer or my sales rep buttons, determining if I want to see the breakout by customer or breakout by sales rep over this period. Let's do it by a customer basis. Okay. So in this case, I'm taking a look from, March to August, and I could even, move this back a little bit further if I wanted. Set that back and set that to the end of August. Go ahead and redo my search. Okay. Kind of gives me some more items in here. So in this case, I'm just seeing my top, in this case, 10 customers. If I wanted to expand that, if I had additional customers that had sales in that period, I could get a higher level of breakout there. Okay. So that's what we call the order hit list there. So I could close page on that. Then, like I said, if I wanted to see the same breakout by sales rep, I could click on that. Then down here, these are my respective sales rep codes that it's giving me the presentation on. Okay, so there's a popular inquiry. I would encourage you to get in and really kind of work with and play with all the as it relates to your sales order activity. Go ahead and play with all these inquiries that we have underneath here and familiarize yourself with them, and it'll make the order management process a lot easier for you. Finally, also, let's take a quick look at some of the reports that we have relating to our sales orders. So we're going to come down under our printouts menu, then under prints by group, then into sales, and here are all our grouping of our sales reports under sales. So again, we have forms that are external facing business forms, different types of internal reports, different price lists, sales price list information, different types of analyticals and general lists. In this case, let's come under and take a look at, by way of an example, under the analysis menu. And in here, let's go ahead and pull up our customer order book. So in here, we can set a variety of parameters here, again, to filter on site, filter on, order type, customer range, order date range, open versus closed orders, and so forth. So, and again, these report parameters are very important in terms of how the report's ultimately going to be generated. So we set our parameters, we come over here and click on print. Then that in part is going to generate this crystal report for us, our customer order book. Primary sort by our sales site, secondary sort by customer. Then under each customer we have all their sales orders, date of the order, order status. It's got the respective product details in here with the quantities that have been ordered, what's been shipped thus far, and what's been invoiced thus far. Okay. So again, a very useful tool for both customer service individuals as well as salesmen in terms of monitoring their backlog and making sure that things are fulfilled on a timely basis. Okay, so that's the basics behind processing a sales order within the system and running the acknowledgement forms and the different types of inquiries and reports. So that's it for now, and in our next lesson we're going to be taking a look at our sales inventory allocation routines. Thanks.